You ever looked at your bank account and felt the cold, silent panic? Not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers, you're doing something wrong. You work hard, maybe harder than most people you know, and still, at the end of the month, you're holding your breath hoping your card doesn't decline. And then you see someone else, not necessarily smarter, not necessarily more talented, living free, building wealth, creating a life on their terms. So what gives? What separates the broke from the wealthy? What really makes the difference between people who struggle all their life and those who seem to attract money like it's oxygen? Here's the answer. It's not luck. It's not inheritance. It's mindset, but not in that Instagram quote, law of attraction, think positive nonsense. I'm talking about real, tangible mental shifts. Shifts that took Jim Rohn from working as a broke farm boy earning pennies to mentoring Tony Robbins and becoming a multimillionaire legend. And if you listen closely, really listen, these 7 mindset shifts can do the same for you, because the biggest difference between poor and rich people is not their bank account. It's how they see the world, how they make decisions, and how they react when life punches them in the mouth. This video isn't about hype. This is about rewiring your mind to stop surviving and start building a life of true freedom. But before we dive into the first shift that changed everything for Jim Rohn, hit that subscribe button, because each week we drop deep, story-driven breakdowns to help you level up your money, mindset, and motivation. If you're ready to stop watching from the sidelines and start building your empire, this is where it starts. Let's begin. Jim Rohn's first shift wasn't flashy. It didn't involve some grand revelation or overnight transformation. In fact, it was almost embarrassingly simple, but it was so powerful, it shook the foundation of everything he believed about life. Here it is. The poor mindset blames. The rich mindset takes full responsibility. When Jim was 25, he was broke. And not just broke, he was broke and bitter. He had excuses for days. He'd say things like, if only the economy was better. If only my boss paid me more. If only I had more time. If only I was born into a different family. Sound familiar? Let me ask you something. How often have you caught yourself saying, if only you had more support, if only you started earlier, if only the algorithm wasn't screwing you over, if only life gave you a better hand. But here's what Jim realized: as long as he blamed the outside world, nothing would change inside his world. One night, a mentor sat him down and told him bluntly, Jim, the problem is not the economy, the problem is you. Now pause and imagine hearing that when you're at your lowest, when you're scraping by, doing your best just to stay afloat. It feels like a slap in the face, but it was the slap Jim needed, because in that moment, he realized something brutal. If someone else controls your life, then someone else owns your future. But if you take responsibility, full, unapologetic ownership of where you are, you instantly take back your power to change it. And that was the beginning. He stopped saying, if only, and started asking, what can I do? That's the first real shift between the poor and the rich. The poor mindset deflects. The rich mindset reflects. Now look, taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything that's gone wrong. That's not strength. That's self-punishment. Responsibility is different. It means saying, this might not be my fault, but it is my move. It's like chess. You might have been handed a weak position, but it's still your turn to play. Let me give you a personal example from one of my closest friends. He grew up in a small, industrial town. Single mom, 3 siblings, no connections, no safety net. He worked 2 jobs, barely sleeping, kept trying to launch businesses. Every time something failed, he had every right to complain. But one day, he made a rule. He wrote it on his bedroom wall in black marker. No complaints, only adjustments. Every time something hit him, bad client, no views, unexpected bill, he didn't complain, he adjusted. Eventually, his business took off. Now he makes in a month what his old coworkers made in a year. Was it fair? No. Was it easy? Hell no. But was it his responsibility? Always. Let me ask you, what would happen if you made that same decision today? What would happen if, from this moment forward, you stopped blaming anything outside yourself? Not your job, not your partner, not your background, not the algorithm, not even your past self. Imagine saying, this is on me. Not to feel guilt, but to feel power. Do you know how rare that is? Most people spend their whole lives pointing fingers. But Jim stopped, and when he stopped, everything started. He said, "Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better." Let that sink in. Taking responsibility is scary. It means you have to admit that your life is a reflection of your choices. But it's also liberating, because if your choices got you here, your new choices can get you out. Here's a practice you can start right now. For the next 7 days, carry a pocket notebook or open a fresh note on your phone. Every time you catch yourself blaming something, anything, write it down. Then reframe it. Example: blame. My boss never gives me opportunities. Reframe: I haven't made myself visible or valuable enough yet. Blame: I don't have enough money to start. Reframe: what value can I create with what I already have? You'll be shocked how many moments in your day are really just disguised excuses. And the moment you remove them, even one by one, you clear space for real growth. So before we even talk about wealth, before we talk about strategy, before we talk about assets, habits, networking, or passive income, we start here, with responsibility. Because without it, nothing sticks. But with it, you become unstoppable. Now, if this shift landed with you, if you're starting to feel the gears turning inside your own mindset, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm this content matters, and more importantly, it tells you that you're committed to real change. Let's keep going, because what Jim learned next would force him to completely rethink how he spent his time, and it changed the entire direction of his life. You ready for that? Jim Rohn once said something that sounds almost offensive until you really understand it. Time is more valuable than money. You can get more money, but you cannot get more time. At first glance, that sounds obvious, right? But most people don't live like it. That's the second major mindset shift. The poor trade time for money. The rich trade money for time, and then scale both. Let me break it down. When Jim was young, like many of us, he believed in the holy grail of hard work. Put your head down, grind, hustle, clock in, clock out. The logic was simple. You work more hours, you get more money. You sacrifice weekends. You skip sleep. You keep the engine running. But here's the dark secret nobody tells you. You can be the hardest working person in the room and still stay broke. Jim realized this the hard way. He worked long hours in sales, 12, sometimes 14 hours a day. And then one afternoon, he met a man who was effortlessly making 10 times what Jim made, while working less than half the time. It shattered his beliefs, because for the first time, Jim saw it wasn't about how hard you worked. It was about how smart you worked, and more importantly, about how you use time as a tool, not just a clock. Let me ask you, how are you spending your time? And I don't mean that in a productivity hack kind of way. I mean, are you selling it 1 hour at a time? Or are you building something that can eventually earn for you while you sleep? Because that's the true difference. Poor people say, I make $25 an hour. Rich people say, my system made $2,500 while I was on a walk. See the gap? Let me tell you a story from my own life. I used to freelance. I was good at it. Copywriting, design, consulting. I made decent money. But the moment I stopped working, the money stopped coming. No vacation. No time off. I was busy, but I wasn't free. Then a mentor said to me, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. I'll never forget that. That one sentence changed the way I looked at every hour of my day. I stopped asking, how can I earn more this week? And started asking, how can I build something this week that'll earn next year? Jim Rohn called this the difference between being a laborer and an architect. The laborer works. The architect builds a system. Both use time, but only one escapes the trap. Now here's the crazy part. The poor mindset often defends the time for money trade. They'll say things like, well, at least it's stable. At least I know what I'm getting. I don't have the luxury to think long term. And that's exactly the trap. The system is designed to make you feel like you don't have time to think bigger, so you stay stuck in the loop. Work, pay bills, repeat. But Jim started thinking differently. He asked, what if I use part of my time each week, not to earn, but to build? Build relationships, build skills, build systems, build products. And slowly, over time, the scales tipped. His passive income began to match his active income. Then it surpassed it. Then he was free. Look, I'm not saying quit your job tomorrow or become some fake entrepreneur overnight. This isn't a TikTok hustle pitch. I'm saying this, If you don't reserve at least a few hours a week to build something that isn't directly tied to your hours, you'll always be someone else's asset. Here's a practice you can start today. Open your calendar, and I mean actually do this, and block out 2 hours per week. Label it time to build. During that time, you're not working for someone else. You're not scrolling. You're not reacting. You're creating. It could be a digital product, a YouTube channel, a course, a service, a system, anything that doesn't just pay you once, but keeps paying. Don't wait until you have time. You make time, or you stay stuck. Now, I get it. You're busy. You've got responsibilities. But let me ask you, what's more expensive? 2 hours a week, or living the same exact year, 50 times in a row? Jim understood this. That's why he stopped selling his time and started investing it. He didn't just hustle harder. He hustled smarter. He said, learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, because your job might pay the bills, but your vision builds the future. If this second shift lit a fire under you, smash that like button. And if you've ever felt trapped by time, drop a comment. I'm done selling time. Let's show the algorithm there are people out here ready to build real freedom. Now, if Jim's shift about time opened his eyes, the next mindset shift is what unlocked his ability to multiply results with less effort. And once you understand it, you'll never hustle the same way again. Jim Rohn used to say something that confused people at first. Success is not something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. It sounds poetic, maybe even vague, but this idea, this third shift, is the exact opposite of vague. It's razor sharp. Here's what it means. Poor people chase, rich people attract. The poor chase money, clients, opportunities, approval, success. The rich become the kind of person who naturally attracts those things. Let's break it down. Most people are in a constant state of chasing. They're chasing more followers, chasing a raise, chasing the next hack or trend. They're running towards success like it's some distant object on the horizon. But the problem is, when you chase something, you give it power. You become the pursuer. And often, the more you chase, the more it runs from you. Jim realized this early. He remembered how, when he was broke and insecure, he'd walk into rooms and try to impress people, try to force deals, try to close clients with pressure and desperation. And it rarely worked. But after a few years of intentional self-work, his posture changed, his energy changed, his confidence wasn't fake anymore. It was earned. And suddenly, he didn't need to chase. People started chasing him. Because here's the secret. When you work on your inner game, your outer game takes care of itself. Let me give you an example from my own world. Years ago, I launched a project online. I had 0 following, 0 proof. So I hustled like crazy, cold DMs, posting every day, pitching people, asking for support. The results, meh. Lots of maybe laters, lots of ghosting, a whole lot of burnout. Then, something shifted. I stopped chasing people, and I started chasing excellence. I leveled up my skill. I worked on how I spoke, how I wrote, how I presented myself, how I thought. I became more valuable, and slowly, quietly, things reversed. People reached out to me. Clients started referring me. I stopped needing to convince, because now I commanded attention without even asking for it. That's the power of becoming the kind of person who attracts results instead of begging for them. Now, let's get brutally practical. How do you shift from chasing to attracting? Simple. You focus on building magnetic assets. Here's what that means. A magnetic asset is anything that keeps working even when you're asleep. It's content that lives online. It's a body that radiates discipline. It's a reputation that speaks before you do. It's a skill so refined, people fight to pay you. Most people spend all their energy on the outreach game. Jim realized that if he became undeniable, if he became so good they can't ignore him, he wouldn't need to do 100 pitches. He'd need one. He said, your income is directly related to your philosophy, not the economy. In other words, change your thinking, and the results follow. Still not convinced? Let me give you an analogy. Think of 2 fishermen. The first one grabs a net and runs up and down the shore, throwing it wildly, trying to catch anything that moves. That's chasing. The second one builds a quiet dock, studies the fish, finds the right bait, and waits patiently. That's attraction. Guess who catches more over time? Exactly. Now, I'm not saying you sit back and manifest wealth into your lap. Attraction is not passive. It takes serious work. But it's work in the right direction. Here's a practical exercise to shift your focus. Write this question at the top of a blank page. What kind of person would my dream client, opportunity, partner be drawn to? Then answer it. Would they be drawn to someone scattered, needy, inconsistent, insecure? Or would they be drawn to someone clear, valuable, focused, and quietly confident? Whatever you write, become that. Every day, ask yourself, am I becoming someone people chase? Or someone who chases everyone? That's the game. Because here's the paradox no one tells you. When you no longer need validation, when you no longer need to close the deal, when you no longer need the outcome, that's usually when you get it. People can feel desperation. They can also feel certainty. Jim stopped being desperate. He became deliberate, and the world adjusted to match his new standard. Let me say that again. The world rises to meet the standard you set for yourself. So if you keep chasing, maybe it's time to pause, to stop sprinting toward external validation, and start building internal gravity. If this idea is landing, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments, I'm done chasing. Because the moment you choose to become magnetic is the moment everything starts to come to you. Now, you might be wondering, if becoming magnetic is this powerful, what's the next level? What did Jim do after he stopped chasing? He did something most people avoid. He mastered the one thing that poor people fear the most, and rich people build their entire life around. Ready to go there? Jim Rohn used to say, it's not the amount that counts, it's what you do with what you have. This is the fourth mindset shift. Poor people spend, rich people allocate. Sounds boring? Maybe, but this boring truth is the silent line between freedom and slavery. Let's unpack it. Most people have no money problems. They have allocation problems. They don't need to make more. They need to stop bleeding out what they already have. Jim remembered one year where he finally had a decent income. After years of scraping by, things were finally clicking. He thought, this is it. I've made it. But by the end of the year, he was broke again. No savings, no investments, no cushion. And then it hit him like a slap. I wasn't poor because I didn't earn. I was poor because I didn't keep. Here's what most people do when money comes in. Pay bills, spend on wants, maybe save a little, wait for the next paycheck. That's survival mode. That's money coming in and disappearing like smoke. But here's what wealthy people do. They don't just spend, they allocate. They divide every dollar with intention. They assign every dollar a job. And that's why their money works harder than they do. Let me make it simple. Imagine two people both earn $5,000 per month. Person A spends $4,500 on lifestyle, rents a new apartment, eats out daily, buys new clothes, keeps up appearances, saves whatever's left, maybe $200 month if lucky. Person B lives well below their means, allocates 20% to investments, keeps 10% in savings, puts 5% towards skills and growth, and then spends what remains. In 5 years, Person A is still on the treadmill. Person B is halfway to freedom. Jim called this the magic of ratios. He said, don't just increase your income, increase your ability to manage what you have. And here's the wildest part. Jim started applying this rule when he was still broke. That's what shocked people. He'd make $50 in a week and still allocated like it was $5,000 because he wasn't managing money. He was managing discipline. And discipline compounds. Let me ask you something. What would happen if, starting today, you manage every single dollar, no matter how small, like a CEO manages a business? You'd start to build structure instead of chaos. You'd stop leaking energy and resources. You'd start to build wealth behavior. Long before you have wealth. Wealthy people don't act rich when they become rich. They act rich before they become rich. Now let's get tactical. Here's a simple 5-bucket allocation system you can start today. No matter how much you earn, 10%. Investing anything that grows in value, 10%. Long-term savings, never touch, 10%. Skill building, books, courses, mentors, 10%. Fun, yes. Actually important, 60%. Living expenses, and here's the rule. If you can't live on 60%, you don't need more money. You need fewer expenses. Harsh. Maybe. True. Always. Let me give you a personal story. I once consulted a guy who made $120,000 a year. And he was broke. He couldn't figure out why. When we looked closer, he was bleeding money through lifestyle creep, car upgrades, fancy dinners, expensive rent, a new watch he didn't need. He wasn't building wealth. He was renting the appearance of wealth. And you know what's worse than being broke? Looking rich while being secretly stressed, anxious, and one emergency away from collapse. That's poverty in a Gucci jacket. So he did something radical. He downsized. He cut expenses to 50%. Started investing in skills. Built a side hustle. 18 months later, he had 6 months of savings, $30,000 in investments, and no debt. He said it felt like exhaling for the first time in 10 years. Jim Rohn understood this. He said, "What's easy to do is also easy not to do. That's the problem. Allocating money is easy, but so is ignoring it. So is telling yourself I'll do it when I earn more. No, you won't, because your habits follow you. They don't magically improve with a bigger paycheck. They just scale your dysfunction. If you spend everything at $2,000 per month, you'll spend everything at $20,000 per month. More money doesn't fix discipline. Discipline fixes money. Here's a practice you can start today. Open your banking app. Look at the last 30 days of transactions. Group them into categories. Ask, what was necessary? What was waste? What did I invest in? What built my future versus bought a feeling? Then make your buckets. Start allocating today, even if it's just $10. Why? Because it's not about the amount. It's about building the habit. You're not just managing money. You're managing your identity as someone who is in control. And that's the beginning of wealth. If this shift hit home, smash that like button. And if you're ready to move from spender to allocator, drop a comment, I control my money. Now, once Jim mastered allocation, he realized something even deeper. Money was just one piece. The real leverage, the real power, came from a force even stronger than money, and almost no one uses it correctly. Ready to go deeper? Let's talk about the fifth shift. Jim Rohn once said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." Sounds nice, right? But let's break it down, because this idea is terrifyingly real. This is the fifth shift. Poor people surround themselves with comfort. Rich people surround themselves with challenge. Most people stay broke, not because they're lazy, not because they're untalented, but because they're in the wrong room. Jim realized this in his late 20s. At the time, he was still struggling, trying to get ahead, working hard, doing the right things. But every time he made progress, he found himself dragged back by the people around him. Not maliciously, just naturally. His friends joked about rich people, laughed at ambition, talked about job security like it was the ultimate dream. And every time Jim tried to level up, he felt guilty, like he was betraying them. That's when a mentor told him the cold truth. If you hang around 5 broke people, guess who becomes number 6? And that changed everything. Jim started auditing his circle, not in a ruthless, cut people off way, but in a deliberate way. He asked, who challenges me to think bigger? Who inspires me? Who lives at the level I want to reach? And guess what? His life changed faster in 6 months than it had in 6 years. Let me ask you something. Who's in your 5? Be honest. Are you constantly around people who complain about money, mock ambition, fear risk, stay stuck, avoid growth? Or are you surrounded by people who talk about ideas, not just problems, challenge your assumptions, celebrate your wins without jealousy, normalize growth, make you slightly uncomfortable in a good way? Because here's the truth. Environment is stronger than willpower. You can have all the motivation in the world, but if everyone around you thinks small, you'll shrink to fit. It's like trying to lose weight while living in a bakery, or trying to build a business while hanging out with people who binge Netflix every night. Your environment isn't neutral. It's either pulling you forward or holding you back. Jim started spending time with people who were ahead of him, people who'd built businesses, invested wisely, spoke in terms of ownership, not just employment. At first, he felt intimidated, but soon, he felt activated, because when you upgrade your circle, you upgrade your standard, and your standard becomes your life. Now I know what you might be thinking, but what if my current friends and family don't get it? You don't need to cut everyone off, but you do need to balance the influence. Start consuming content from high-level thinkers. Listen to podcasts. Read biographies. Join communities that stretch you, even online. Proximity matters. Think of it like this. Your life is a thermostat. The people around you are the temperature. And unless you change the heat source, you'll always revert back to the average. Here's a challenge you can start today. Make a 2-column list. On the left, write the 5 people you spend the most time with. On the right, write how each one affects your thinking. Be honest. Then ask, who pulls me up? Who drags me down? Who makes me feel less ambitious? Who reminds me of what's possible? This isn't about judgment. It's about intention. Jim didn't just change his circle for motivation. He did it because growth becomes inevitable when you're in the right room. He said, discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons. The same goes for environment. Changing your circle may feel uncomfortable now, but staying stuck because of loyalty to comfort, that costs decades. If this shift hit you, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, I'm upgrading my circle, because the next shift we'll explore is the one that finally helped Jim Rohn stop working for money and start making money work for him. Jim Rohn was already doing well by this point. He'd fixed his habits, he'd upgraded his thinking, he'd built systems, he had influence, but something was still wrong, because no matter how great his business became, there was a ceiling. He was still the engine. He was still the one showing up, making decisions, doing the work, and while he wasn't broke anymore, he still wasn't free. That's when he discovered the 6th mindset shift. Poor people think money is for spending. Rich people know money is for planting. Let's explain. Most people treat money like fruit. You get some, you eat it. Simple. The wealthy people treat money like seeds. You get some, and you plant it. You put it in places where it grows on its own. You don't just trade money for pleasure. You trade money for assets. This changed everything for Jim. He said, wealth is not a matter of income. Wealth is a matter of what you own that increases in value. That's the shift. So what are assets? Let's get practical. Assets are anything that generates income, increases in value, doesn't require constant effort to maintain. Some classic examples: stocks, real estate, intellectual property, books, music, courses, automated businesses, ownership in companies, licensing deals, online products. But it's not just about owning things. It's about building systems that detach time from income. Jim learned that you don't get rich by saving. You get rich by deploying capital. Now let me be clear. This doesn't mean recklessly investing in crypto hype or buying whatever your friend posts about on Twitter. It means thinking like a farmer. You plant with patience. You water consistently. You wait for harvest. Most people want fast fruit. Wealthy people play the long game. Jim started small. He took a portion of his income, and instead of upgrading his lifestyle, he bought farmland. Then income-producing real estate. Then businesses. And guess what? Every time his income grew, his assets grew even faster. Here's the irony. Poor people think rich people are lucky, but most wealthy people chose to delay gratification. They said no to the flashy car, no to the big house, at least at first, no to the empty status games, because they understood this. $1 spent is $1 gone. $1 invested is $1 that works for you forever. Let me ask you this. If I gave you $1,000 right now, would you spend it or plant it? Would it become new shoes or a new revenue stream? That's not a rhetorical question, because your answer reveals your future. Let me give you a real story. I knew a guy who got a $10,000 bonus at his job. He had plans: Vegas trip, new iPhone, designer jacket, and dinner at that one place with the fire on the table. But instead, he took all $10,000 and bought camera equipment, started shooting content for businesses, turned it into a monthly retainer service. Now he earns $7,000 a month from that one decision. And the jacket, he still doesn't have it, but now he could buy 10 if he wanted, because money, once planted, doesn't just come back. It brings friends. It multiplies when you know where to plant. So how do you start? You begin with the investor mind. Here's the difference. The consumer mind asks, what can I buy with this money? The investor mind asks, what can this money build for me? Next time you get paid, ask that second question. Even with small amounts, start by setting up an asset fund. Label it in your bank account. Put 10% of every incoming dollar into that fund. Your only rule: you can't touch it unless it's going into something that either grows or pays you back. Some starter ideas: buy a course to learn a monetizable skill, build a simple digital product, invest in index funds. Long term, boring. Reliable by basic equipment for a service-based hustle partner in a small business. You don't need to be Warren Buffett. You just need to think like a builder, not a spender. Here's a simple phrase to tattoo on your brain. Money sitting still gets spent. Money with a job gets multiplied. Jim's turning point wasn't earning more. It was realizing that every dollar he earned could become an employee. And the rich don't fire their employees. They put them to work. You don't need to be a finance expert. You don't need a high salary. You don't even need a team. You need the discipline to plant now, so that you never have to chase later. If this shift landed, hit like. And if you're ready to build assets, not just income, write in the comments, I plant before I spend. Because in the final mindset shift, Jim learned how to take everything he built, discipline, environment, systems, assets, and turn it into something even greater. Legacy. Jim Rohn once asked a room full of young entrepreneurs, after you've earned the money, after you've bought the house, after you've traveled the world, then what? The room was silent, because most people never think beyond success. They think about getting there, but not about what happens after. And that's the final mindset shift that changed Jim's life. Poor people chase survival. Rich people build significance. Let's break this down. The poor mindset is focused on getting by, pay the bills, buy the stuff, feel secure, maybe even show off a little. And once they hit that point, they think they've made it. But Jim realized something strange. Once he hit all his external goals, the car, the income, the freedom, he didn't feel fulfillment. He felt empty, because survival is not enough. Even success is not enough. At some point, you need something bigger than you. That's where legacy begins. Let me tell you a story. Jim once spoke at a small college. The students asked him, "How do we know we're on the right path?" He smiled and said, "If the path ends with you, it's too small." Boom. Let that sink in. If your entire vision, your work, your wealth, your impact, ends with you feeling good, you're playing a small game. Because real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the number of lives you touch. That's when Jim started shifting everything. He went from how do I build income to how do I build something that outlives me. He started mentoring, started teaching, started planting seeds, not just of money, but of mindset, in millions of people. And the crazy part? That's when his business exploded even more. Because when you operate from service, not ego, people feel it. They're drawn to it. They trust it. And it multiplies your impact and your income. Here's the hard truth. Most people stay broke, not because they lack skill, but because they lack vision. Their entire ambition is selfish. I want a Lambo. I want to prove them wrong. I want to feel powerful. But that's not power. That's pain in disguise. Jim flipped the script. He asked, what if wealth wasn't the end goal, but the vehicle for something much bigger? That question changed everything. So he made a new goal: build leaders, inspire thinkers, create ripple effects that would last decades beyond his lifetime. Let me ask you a question, and answer honestly. If you disappeared tomorrow, what would continue to grow because you were here? If the answer is nothing, that's your starting point. Don't get me wrong, survival matters, freedom matters, but once you've stabilized your life, the next level isn't more pleasure, it's more purpose. And purpose starts with service. Not fake give back PR service, real, messy, unglamorous service. Mentoring someone who's struggling, sharing your knowledge publicly, creating systems that make other people's lives better. Here's the paradox: the more people you help, the more doors open for you. Your reputation spreads, your energy changes, and suddenly, you're not just rich, you're needed. Let me give you a story from a friend of mine. He ran a business that did okay, mid-six figures. He was proud of it, but he always felt something missing. One day, during a podcast, someone asked, "What's your work doing for the world?" He was stumped. That night, he sat down and wrote a simple mission: to help 100,000 young creatives turn their skills into sustainable income. He shifted his entire business model around it. Less focus on profit, more on people. Guess what? Profit followed anyway, because purpose scales. Jim Rohn said, "Give without remembering, receive without forgetting." He didn't just teach about money, he taught about meaning. And that's the final layer of the rich mindset. You don't build just for you, you build for the people behind you. The ones watching, the ones learning from your example, the ones who may never meet you, but are forever changed because you chose to build more than a lifestyle. So here's your challenge. Create a legacy map. Ask yourself, who can I help right now with what I know? What message do I want to leave behind? What systems can I create that outlive me? What would I be proud of 50 years from now? Write it out. Print it. Put it on your wall, because when you wake up every day with a mission bigger than money, you stop quitting. You stop fearing judgment. You stop playing small. You become inevitable. If this final shift hit your heart, not just your mind, then do this. Like the video. Comment below. I build for legacy, because now, you've got the mindset, the tools, the shifts, the clarity, and it's time to put it all into action. Remember, the poor mindset ends with survival. The rich mindset begins with service. Let's build a life that outlasts us. And that is the Jim Rohn way. Now here's the truth. You don't need more time. You need more intention. You don't need more motivation. You need better decisions. And you don't need another video that tells you what you already know. You need to act on what you just learned. Because if you go back to your feed now, if you scroll to the next video, if you do nothing with this, then you've just entertained yourself with a better version of your old mindset. But if you're serious, if something clicked today, then prove it. Hit subscribe, because every week, we go deep. Not fluff, not theory. Real mental rewiring that the top 1% actually use. And if you want to keep going now, if you feel that fire's still burning, click the next video on the screen. It'll hit even harder than this one. Go now, because the gap between poor and rich starts in the seconds after this video ends.